Ted Cruz is a Cuban who is running for Texas State Senate. Or I'm sorry, the Texas Senate seat, not the state Senate, but the national. And then the author of T-Vangelical. He is from CBN. Correspondent David Brody is here. So we have a stereotypical Christian on the couch, too. And I love this, sitting next to a real libertarian who, of course, libertarians hate God. Matt Kibbe from FreedomWorks. I mean, this is what a big tent is all about. Let me go with you two, because you speak, if you will, speak to the extremes, because I know neither of you are really extreme, although this does. You play the role, or try to explain, the extreme libertarian that says, I don't want God people in, and you speak to the role of the evangelicals that are saying we don't want the atheists in this movement. How do we bridge the gap there?
Well, I can tell you that one of the reasons I wrote the book, the T-Evangelicals, is to shoot down a lot of these stereotypes, a lot of these myths. I mean, you know, the truth is, Glenn, is that conservative Christians, and that's what these T-Evangelicals are, they're conservative Christians that make up at least half the movement, if not more. They are breaking bread with the Tea Party libertarians for many different reasons, and they all make sense from a Judeo-Christian perspective, from a biblical perspective. And so I go around on mainstream media and talk all about this idea that, you know, look, you got it all wrong, MSNBC and all you folks, that evangelicals are not a one or a two-trick pony. It's not just about the life and marriage issue. And oh, by the way, they don't want to co-opt the movement with social issues. They actually care about, what a shock, you know, reducing the debt, making sure we get our fiscal house in order, and they see it all through a biblical worldview. And so, but for the Andrea Mitchells of the world, and no disrespect to Andrea Mitchell at MSNBC, but for folks like that, they just don't get it. And so this book was part of the reason why. And I talk about in the book about how do you get along with the libertarians in the party. And the good news here is that conservative Christians, like I said, don't want to co-opt the movement. Therefore, there really isn't as much tension as people think, because
it's not the Christian coalition that may have been good at the beginning, but then turned political and turned about the GOP, and it just fell apart.
Well, that's right.
Right.
And then, you know, just so you know, as you'll talk about constitutionally limited government, well, evangelical Christians believe the exact same thing. They call it a return to Judeo-Christian principles. It's very much the same thing.
You know, I think the Tea Party movement in a lot of ways is that coalition, because there was a decided shift away from what I call big government conservatism. At some point, and I had this debate with Marvin Olasky at my alma mater at Grove City just a couple months ago, there was this notion that somehow conservatism wasn't good enough. It had to be compassionate conservatism, which I thought was a redundancy. And he took that to Washington, and guess what? It was corrupted. And suddenly it became about government subsidizing a certain set of values, government creating an infrastructure where someone from Washington was going to tell us how to act, how to act out our values, and that's where it went wrong. And so I called the Tea Party movement a small L libertarian movement, because we all believe in individual responsibility. We all believe in values that come from the bottom up, not from Washington, D.C. And I think that's a very easy to hold together coalition.
Yeah, we were talking today that I don't want to talk politics. I think everybody's, I mean, aren't you tired of talking politics? I'm so tired of it. You're not? Oh, I am. I'm tired of talking about politics. I am not tired of talking about truth. And that's the difference. Our society has been trained to talk about politics. Republicans or Democrats. That doesn't have anything to do with truth. Doesn't have anything to do with truth most times. And that's what we need to shake. Now, speaking of that, the politician.
Oh, you're killing me.
Ted, you are a guy, what were you doing 3 years ago?
3 years ago, I just stepped down as the Solicitor General of Texas, so was the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh, a lawyer on top of it.
It's two strikes against me already.
And now you're running against the establishment Republican, and I had a very powerful Republican tell me just the other day here in Texas that no way you can win, which I don't get it from you. Matt, how's he doing?
He's going to win.
He's going to win. I think he is too.
Yep.
But why do you think it is? Try to take yourself out of it. I mean, what do you think is happening in Texas?
Look, what's happening in Texas is the same thing that's happening all over the country. There is a tidal wave sweeping this country. And Americans are waking up. Actually, I agree with a lot of what you said in the monologue. As dire as what's happening in Washington is, as dire as the explosion of federal government power and spending and the threat to our liberty, that's what it took to wake us up. And I think we are seeing a great awakening reminiscent of the Reagan Revolution. I mean, in 1979, things were very dire. And it took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. I'm convinced the most long-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders standing up who defend liberty and defend the Constitution.
I will tell you that I think that is true. I have to say thank you to Barack Obama for making me the man that I am. Because if it wasn't, if it was John McCain, I probably wouldn't be half the man I am. Now, the secret here, and Matt, I want you to talk about this a little bit, is how do we keep people from falling asleep? Because, I mean, Mitt Romney, believe me, I'm campaigning for the guy who's not a communist. If he somehow or another drops out of the race and he's replaced with a pineapple, I'm campaigning for the pineapple. But how do we keep, Mitt Romney gets in, how do we keep that passion that we don't let people get into Washington and then just give us more of the same crap? And we become everything that the Democrats have become.
Every speech I give, the applause line is November 7th is more important than November 6th. Do you guys feel that? Yes. And we've seen this. This is not a political uprising. This is a sustained trend, and I think it's driven by the economics of the internet, the ability of people to connect with each other, the ability to know what he's going to do when he gets to the Senate. And that's power, and that's shifting power away from the inside those marble walls of the Senate committees out to the public. And we saw this dynamic first time with Nancy Pelosi's health care bill. The people in the audience literally had read the bill as a community, shared that information in real time that not a single congressman had read. That's the power of the internet. That's the power of decentralization. The genie does not go back into the bottle here.
And you can't hold Mitt Romney accountable if you don't show up and vote in 2012. It really is that simple. You know, these evangelicals that I talk about, there is a sense out there that the Tea Party and these evangelical conservative Christians and many more, not just conservative Christians, but the Tea Party as a whole, will show up in spades in 2012 to make sure that Barack Obama is a one-term president, as Michelle Bachmann likes to say. Look, Ralph Reed's group, who I call a Tea-evangelical type organization, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, they have the cell phone numbers right now and emails of 13 million Tea-evangelical type voters within the Tea Party, evangelicals, and they are distributing voter guides. Forget the churches. They're distributing them by text message. And these 13 million cell phones and emails that they have, they didn't have them in 2008. That's what 3.5 years of Barack Obama will do.
Okay, so tell me, I mean, I've spoken to congregation after congregation all over the country, and people have been saying, you know, we need a third great awakening. I contend we're in it, but we're at the beginning of the third great awakening. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that you'll hear, obviously, David Barton and Jim DeMint, and we've heard Ted Cruz here tonight talk about that as well. Absolutely, because one of the reasons that these conservative Christians, as I call them, are breaking bread with the Tea Party is they understand that government's getting way too bigger and God is getting way too smaller in the public arena. And this is something that libertarians can feel comfortable with because it's not about injecting God into a personal equation into their lifestyle. It's not about that. It's a much broader 50,000-foot view of what this is all about. You know what's amazing to me is, it took me, I mean, when we went over to Israel, I went over to Israel and nobody trusted me. Nobody trusted me at all. I mean, I'm a Mormon, so none of the Christians trusted me. They're like, "You're not a Christian." I'm like, "Really?" Anyway, so none of the Christians trusted me, and then because
The Jewish people said, well, he's a Christian. They didn't trust me. And so, no, over in Israel, it was amazing. It was only by our actions did they trust us in the end. When we finished after a week and being there, people watched us like a hawk. And they said afterwards, after we finished and I was leaving, people told my staff in tears, people told my staff, I have watched you. You people really do believe this. You really mean it. The great news is it's not about getting Obama unelected. It's not about, grabbing power for the church. It's not about the Jewish people. It's about doing the right thing. Everybody is starting to say, we have to start doing the right thing. And that is a long-term winning formula if we can keep people on that path. Back in just a second.